For more on Mchunu's testimony, we are joined by political analyst Professor Sethulego Matebesi and criminologist Professor Kholofelo Rakubu. Remember, you can also send us your comments and questions on WhatsApp to 072-110-5584, or you can give us a call on 010-594-6010. Also engage with us on our X page at Newzroom Afrika 405. All right, let's begin our conversation. A very good evening to you both, Profs. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Prof Matebesi, perhaps let's begin with you. I mean, finally, the police minister has now had his say with regards to the allegations that were made by General Mkhwanazi on the 6th of July. He said today that he was going to do justice to this narrative. Do you believe in what we've heard so far? He's sort of giving a narrative that would make probable sense?
Hi, good evening, and good evening to my fellow panelists, South Africans. Well, we're talking about a minister who has public experience of being a career politician. And in terms of delivering his message, I think for me, he made sense. And to an extent that he came forth as somebody who were advancing the narrative that this decision has been taken, and there were valid reasons for the disbandment of this particular task team, and that was. But what was really worrying, a huge concern for me, and where at one stage the EFF leader also interjected, was when he perhaps thought that he's now being cut short. You could see that since that public media briefing by General Mkhwanazi, and I agree with the minister there, the suspended minister there, that I think that might have haunted him, and you could see the frustration also at sometimes coming out.
Prof Rakubu, from a criminologist point of view, with what Prof Matebesi has just pointed out, with regards to him putting his narrative in a way that is convincing, were you convinced today?
No, I was not convinced. Let me greet the viewers. I was not convinced. Remember the constitutional power struggle that was alleged in the initial stages. Today, I was a bit concerned because of the constitutional misinterpretation or misunderstanding, because the sections are very particular with the minister's role, the national commissioner and the provincial commissioner. And at some point, he alluded to certain decisions taken in the absence of a particular provincial commissioner. And there were connotations that suggest that since this task team was politically initiated, I've got every right to disband it politically. So it was a very deflective, it was a very defiant, but he tried the transparent strategy to take us through communication and emails. But along the way, those proof of communication suggested that there were transgressions here and there by excluding certain figures. And again, to come and highlight findings of a work study wherein you do not even have the right basis to understand whether that who commissioned that work study, what was its mandate, is it enough to even come and highlight on or advise on a decision to disband a political task team? He couldn't answer that. And again, giving such a directive in the SAPS is worrisome when you have an understanding of the complicities around investigations that the task team is busy with. You can't be saying disband immediately, and you disband, you give a directive when you know the SAPS head is on leave. That is also worrisome. But I'm hoping the politicians are going to take us through wherein they can maybe probe and push for consistencies around that and further explanation with regard to how do you then interpret your letter? How do we interpret this immediately in that context? Because immediately in investigation is stop it right now, halt or pause And now, how do we do that when there are certain cases that are supposed to proceed, when there are instances where we're working around whistleblower protection, but you're saying immediately, do you have an understanding of the complication this is calling? What advice do you? So I'm still interested in, besides the work study, beside budgetary constraints, and I'm also worried about putting the narrow scope of the task team, of which that was not the plan. It was initially narrow by design, right? You cannot come in and say the scope is narrow, but you want to utilize a work study that is holistic, because in the work study, they allege there are issues of gangsterism, gang violence here and there. But we will need a directive work study that would have advised directly on the issues around the political task team.
Prof Matebesi, I mean, Prof speaks here of this directive being worrisome, particularly also when it comes to the funding issues of the PKTT that the minister had put out the letter to be disbanded. How do you interpret his argument that disbanding the PKTT was based on operational necessity and funding priorities? What does it reveal about the relationship that even Prof is referring to between political decision-making and operational independence?
Yes, before answering your question, I just want to highlight to South Africans we should be very cautious when analyzing the situation and the nature of our current politics. This is exactly, and I think what is good for South Africa today is that it gives us a glimpse of how politicians respond. And what is happening in SAPS is something that happens at all different levels in municipalities and everywhere else. And it gives us an indication how civilians who are employed need to respond to directive from politicians. And what for me is even more worrying, it's when the police minister indicated that some task team members confided in him. And I think for me, the first starting point will be to call a meeting with all these senior police managers to say that, look, on the basis of all these allegations that have been made, what I'm now going to do, I'm going to request with your blessings, can't we now do at least a scientific study and assessment of the situation, and on the basis of that, decide the way forward. So yes, perhaps he himself believed that because he was quite adamant that he have written many letters, but and I think sometimes our leaders do not look at the consequences of their action and inaction. And in this regard, it's not just a letter which will tomorrow be, everyone will enforce that letter. It will have huge consequences for South Africa, and especially if you look at what has been happening in South Africa in terms of political killing. So for me, that directive was not well informed to start with. And you can't just rely on the basis of, I don't even know where that research originated. But that's where I perhaps have a huge problem with the basis of that letter, or what I would say the directive, which is now based on perhaps, one study that have been done, and what I would also say serious allegations from some insiders within the task team.
I mean, Prof Matebesi, you just made a point about this giving us a glimpse as to what happens even in other departments and the reaction of politicians to certain situations, as well as the reaction of officials and the reactions of civilians. Do you think there are definite lines that show in terms of what needs to be done or how one needs to react, especially when it comes between the political principal and the official at the helm of a department such as SAPS? I mean, General Masimula was speaking there that I report to the Minister of Police. When he gives out a directive, I would act out on it. Are there clear lines, especially when it comes to the political principle above a certain department with regards to the instructions they give and how those instructions are acted out?
No, the line should be cleared. We do have your Public Financial Management Act. We've got many policy and regulations that guides the relationship between or how public servants should behave. But I think the lines are blurred, and there's tremendous pressures on civilians by politicians. And I would even say politicians bulldoze their way. And if you don't adhere or follow their instructions, and as the National Commission have stated, and which I don't buy, because that is also perhaps indicative, he's not the right person to be in that position, because how do you bow to political pressure if you are sitting in such a key position? Because the decisions that are taken at that level has huge implications. And I strongly believe that perhaps this now is also a lesson for all of us going forward, not only for the public service, in terms of how to govern or define the relationship between those who are our political office bearers and our civilians who are employed to do certain tasks. It's easy for me to say that, but we really need to reach that stage. Otherwise, we will continue to sit in this conundrum where people will just say, I had to bow due to political pressure. And that is almost like, shifting the responsibility to be transparent and accountable.
Prof. Rakubu, I mean, we've been hearing over the past couple of days about the PKTT having served its objectives, possibly having come to the end of its time. What would you say are the advantages and limitations of such a task team, particularly in tackling political killings, and how can their effectiveness be measured?
The first disadvantage is that you are investigating a political killings. There is a problem because you are likely to come across your bosses. You are likely to implicate those that are supposed to even your leadership in particular. So it is at this stage because of the nature of investigation, nature of the covert operations, because now we understand that as they were dealing with those operations, there were municipal managers implicated here and there are cartels, there are political infiltration. So such would require political will to receive necessary support. So apparently, the task team could not deliver as much because of the political infiltration across justice cluster. There were issues with the prosecutions and convictions, and in most cases, the suspects given bails inappropriately. So at some stage, the hands were so tied, and it needed leadership that was sober, leadership that understood the mandate, leadership that was well informed. So the disadvantage is when now you agree to handle a politically inclined mandate, when you do not have the necessary political support, when now the policies in place suggest separation of power, but in reality, there's no such as separation of power.
All right, Prof. Rakubu and Prof. Matebesi, let's just hold our thoughts there. We will continue with our discussion after the break. Do remember that you can send us your WhatsApps to 072 110 5584, or you can give us a call on 010-594-6010. Do stay with us. Welcome back. So today we heard the police minister, who is on special leave, giving his evidence in chief at the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee, which is probing allegations and infiltration within SAPS. We are joined by political analyst Professor Sethulego Matebesi, as well as criminologist Professor Kholofelo Rakubu. You can send us your comments or questions. I believe we have a caller on the line, Christopher from Thohoyandou. Very good evening to you. What's your question or comment this evening?
I'm just worried that no one seems to understand where the minister's role stands and where the National Commission's role stands. I don't think it's proper. Where are we going if that the minister, the whole minister, can't know what needs to be done by him? I don't understand that.
All right, Christopher.
And coincidentally, my sister, the events, when you look at them going on and on with them, if you are honest, if you check the ad hoc committee there are people who are there not to probe the truth, but to protect individuals. There in the committee, we know what is, but let them do that. We are watching. We are not fools, South Africans. We know who is doing that what and who is doing what. We'll next year, they are coming back to us. We'll decide ourselves.
All right. Thank you so much, Christopher, for your comments this evening. We also have James out in Orange Farm. James, a very good evening to you. What are your thoughts today?
No, I'm saying I'm happy about the responses from the minister, because we as people, we don't analyze the situation. Once we heard story one-sided, and then we can't be happy. We fly high if it is true.
All right, James.
But it needs us to listen to both stories, Mkwana's story, Masemula's story, Sudia's story, and the minister's story. Then we analyze it, that will get the truth.
Okay, James, thank you so much for giving us your thoughts this evening. Let's continue with our professors in terms of our conversation. So, Professor Rakubu, we heard from Christopher saying that he's concerned that no one understands their role, this being the minister as well as the National Commission. I suppose he's referring there to some of those blurred lines that Prof. Matebesi was talking about a little earlier on.
Yes, the constitutional or legal power struggles are very evident in this regard. But we are here because some understood of their mandate as per the legislatives. That is why they had to report. That is why there are commissions, so that commissions can now assist leadership to understand their constitutional mandate or the constitutional interpretation, because there seems to be a misinterpretation with regard to these powers. We are in this conundrum because of the overstepping that looks like a norm, and it's very difficult to convince leadership to understand their obligations and limitations, because the rights are very clear, or the responsibilities are very clear, as I've indicated in your section 205, 206, and 207. It's very clear, but I understand of the blurring line in the interpretation and so forth. So the commission's and the committee's responsibility is to then assist. And I'm sure after this, then we can move and have a paradigm shift where all these blurry lines and constitutional power struggles will be then settled.
Prof. Matebesi, Christopher also made another point speaking about committee MPs only being there to protect certain individuals. What do you make of some of the questioning that we've heard in the past few days when it comes to certain political party members probing in their way of asking questions? Do you think this contributes to public distrust?
No, well, it's one thing, and one can say yes, it does contribute to public discourse, but we are talking about politicians. And it's sad, and it has been playing itself out yet once again, where politics should be set aside. You know, irrespective of whether the minister or whoever is front of this ad hoc committee is a member of Party X, if I have an opportunity, my interest should lie in at least advancing the interests of South Africans. But there has been several moments where you could see partisan ideologies and promoting and protecting and advancing your own political or their own political parties. It came out from some of our MPs. And that for me is another concern to say, and I don't even understand why are we here in the first place, having this ad hoc committee at this stage, because this is a committee that in the first place should have picked up all these particular issues. And yet, when they've got an opportunity to pose questions, it's all about protecting the image of their party or protecting their own party members.
Prof. Rakubu, I mean, we're speaking here about the interest of South Africans. At the heart of this, it's the safety and the security of South Africans as a whole. How resilient are police institutions in our country from infiltration and corruption?
Oh, they are very vulnerable, very volatile, basically because of if we were to go to the high echelon of the SAPS and look at the appointments, the nature of appointments, those have elements of the political infiltration there, because we appoint you, we put you in a particular position, therefore you have to abide and listen. It's very vulnerable. But then I appreciate the whole dialogue or communication around policing issues, policing leadership, political infiltration, and the issues around the communication, internal processes, and so forth, because this might lead to a paradigm shift only if there's political will to ensure that we transform, we move, we clean house, basically, because there's a lot that is not going as per the initial plan.
Prof. Matebesi, are we too far in with regards to those reforms and cleaning house? Is South Africa still being able to be saved?
You could even see by how I took a deep breath. I really like what my fellow panelists stated there. We're extremely good. This is a wonderful, actually one of the best countries to be in. South Africa is a good country. But I don't think you will get all those answers. And I might come forth as a prophet of doom, but I do not have the confidence on the basis of what history have taught us and what we see in front of us. I don't think we're any close to that. In as much as this provides us yet another opportunity, shocking revelations, we've seen even this evening, raids at businesses and all that, those are what is going to happen. But at the end of the day, the report of this ad hoc committee will land in the hand of a politician. The Madanga Commission report will land in the hands of a politician. And that's where our problem is. We've seen it before, and perhaps, I don't know, perhaps in future, the youth of this country, those who get opportunities, they should not emulate the men and women that we are leading us currently. They are not setting a good example. There are many good leaders in this country, but some of them have cast serious aspersions on this wonderful democracy that we're enjoying in our country.
Prof. Rakubu, I see you nodding there profusely when Prof says that many of these reports are just going to land in the hands of politicians once again, like we've seen with all these other commissions.
Indeed. Remember, we do not have beautiful history with commissions. Implementation has always been an issue. Some beautiful, voluminous reports are there from Zondo Commission and many others, and the implicated individuals are still taking decisions for us today. So one can always wonder as to whether what comes next. I agree with Prof that a politician is going to review these findings or recommendation and decide otherwise. Looking into the political interest, they are going to decide for us. We might not even get prosecutions or conviction, but get redeployment and normalize such decisions and move forward and expect service delivery. That will not be possible. But I'm just 2% hopeful that maybe, just maybe, with all this noise, where the shocking revelations and whatnot, maybe they might shape or bring something on board. But is there political will? Politically, is the South African political landscape ready to embrace change? I don't know. I don't look at what is happening in the committee, political scoring and so forth. So you wonder, when will South Africans come first? The needs of South Africans or safety of South Africans comes first, or whistleblowers or victim safety comes first? I don't know. But we are hopeful, Ritaring. We are hopeful.
With that 2%, Prof. Rakubu. I mean, speaking of that 2% hope, do you think that perhaps maybe even if we don't get the answers and the accountability that we need, particularly with this probe, with looking into other departments, maybe this could open up for us as South Africans from an active citizenry point of view, that we could start looking into some of these infiltrations and start digging out what could supposedly be a rot that stops from service delivery and all the other benefits that South Africans are supposed to be getting out of it?
I had other analysts saying what is happening in the SAPS is happening across board. It might be time for an opportunity for other departments to come forward. Political infiltration is real. Political decisions or unconstitutional decisions are everywhere. It's just a matter of time before we hear of another department. And this is what has led to the poor police-community relations, especially in the policing, and also poor trust in the justice cluster because of what we've just had. But I'm hoping that the platform provides opportunities for other departments to also try to clean house. They might get something out, although they will have to deal with the political biasness, political scoring, and the political policies that will be will be hindering their movement. But it is worth a try. It is worth a try to save the democracy.
Prof. Matebesi, if we're saying that the resilience of the police institutions is vulnerable, and giving these allegations that could possibly be linking to the police minister, what would you say are the systemic risks to democratic accountability, not only in the police operations, but across the board, across departments?
Well, yes, very quickly before I respond to that question, I think we are also here, and that is commendable, and perhaps it should serve as a template for many African countries. We are here because of our president. I mean, not in terms of the ad hoc committee, but in terms of the Madlanga Commission. And I know today is about the SAPS ad hoc committee, but that came as a result of the president, and that is very commendable because it also just tells us, irrespective of whether we believe that perhaps not much will come out of that, but when these things are peddled, there are undue consequences, that it puts pressure on other departments, other units. But for me, a systemic challenge and for the South African police is that you've got young men and women who have joined the police service. And when they look at it, they will be experiencing all this infighting, not only from a management point of view. And the question is, how can we expect to fight the monster of crime in South Africa? And I've stated it, and I'm going to put my head once again on the block. It's the levels of crime in this country is unacceptable. And you really would not want to have all these battles at this high level of police, because to a certain extent, even highly sensitive issues issues are being discussed, which can just also compromise security. But at the end of the day, I think it's democracy at its best. It's good for our country, and we should perhaps be positive that many positive implications or consequences will come out of, this particular commission will have a huge impact to such an extent that many African countries can even learn from South Africa.
Most certainly. A very good example that has been set, like you're saying, by the president in ensuring that that transparency is there for South Africans to be able to see for themselves and for those that are being accused to be held accountable. Prof. Rakubu, what criminological strategies do you think we need to implement in order just to restore the confidence in SAPS?
There can never be one criminological strategy. And remember, with criminological strategies, we taken back to critical institutions, which are communities, because they are critical part and parcel of ensuring community safety. They understand crime, they understand criminals, they know where criminals are, and policing in its initial form cannot function without community collaboration, community trust. So as we rebuild the trust, as we restructure and reform, we must have an understanding of community needs. And policing in its original form, it's supposed to be beefed up or supported by sister department who's supposed to take care of their own responsibilities to make sure that policing functions. So policing is unable to deliver, or the police is unable to deliver because of other collapsed institutes that are making policing difficult. Police officers in South Africa currently are chasing a hungry young offender, of which is the responsibility responsibility of other sister departments to take care of that. If now we can go back to the drawing board to restructure and include communities and understand our communities and provide thorough criminogenic analysis to understand and make sure that our policies have in mind the pertinent issues in our communities. Because at some point, I think we have beautiful policies, but those policies don't have in mind issues that are affecting communities, that are affecting squatter camps, that are affecting any other informal settlement or township. They are beautiful to be implemented in Sandton, for example, but doesn't have in mind issues of community policing in rural areas, your safety, rural safety, and so forth. So we need now to start at the bottom and to clean up at the bottom and to revisit prescripts that are to verify if they're still relevant in the postmodern South African society and evaluate accordingly. As we evaluate, we must thoroughly evaluate and not politically evaluate, because we are where we are because we politically evaluated and tried to politically implement, and we're leaving an offender behind.
All right, so it's certainly not a one-size-fits-all approach. We've got another caller on the line. Chris in Durban, very good evening to you. What are your thoughts today?
Thank you very much for getting me on. Look, to answer your question directly, okay, and kudos to the Bafana making the World Cup next year. The minister is a perfect dribbler of note. You know, I like to compare him to Jazzy Queen, Marlowe, Lord, and all these guys. He started off so strong. And when he was put on the spot, he started dribbling where he was digging himself a hole.
What did you pick up particularly? Just give us a few examples, Chris, of where you found that dribbling to have taken place.
Well,
okay, we seem to have a problem with the line with Chris. I'm not sure, Chris, if we could possibly call you back. We are going for a very quick ad break. We'll be back with more of this discussion after this. Welcome back. We continue our discussion for this evening as Minister Senzo Mchunu was fielding questions from the evidence leader today with regards to his statement in the probe that is being held by the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee. We do have a few of your WhatsApp messages. Sishoka MJ says our constitution needs to be rewritten. Why would somebody who never got a rank be able to appoint a general? The police will never do the work right because he or she will need to work for that minister to be happy and for promotion. And then Magaisa says, suspended Minister Mchunu must come clean as far as the underworld is concerned because he is calling cartels bosses his comrades. And Mdunga says it's clear that the minister is being dishonest. He continues to mislead the committee about the disbandment of the PKTT. His calm demeanor might convince some South Africans to believe him, but we must not be fooled by appearances. And Anonymous says the criminologist expert didn't listen to Minister Senzo Mchunu. It's not about her being convinced, but the minister responding comprehensively to the allegations that are leveled against him. It is very important to be objective in one's analysis. All right, and the last one is from T2, and T2 says people have already judged him based on Mkwanazi's presentations, but on my side, there's some sense in what he is saying. All right, so those are some of your WhatsApps. Perhaps let's get some reaction from both of you. Prof Rakubu, they're saying that the analysis there needs to be objective. Perhaps you were not listening attentively to the minister. What's your response to that?
That is my objective analysis. If I do not understand decisions, I don't understand decisions. If I feel a misinterpretation or misunderstanding of constitutional mandate, I have every right to touch on it. But we South Africans, this is beautiful. We have to have differing opinions on the matter.
Most certainly. Prof Matebesi, Sishuka MJ was speaking there about the constitution having to be rewritten. That I suppose when he was saying that who appoints the general, it's not the minister, but it's actually the president. But I suppose what he was trying to make there as a point was that the minister themselves needs to go through rank in order for his subordinates to be able to respect his directives and decisions. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, we can rewrite the Constitution on a daily basis, but as long as politicians are advancing their own interests, we will forever be confronted with the kind of challenges that we have today in South Africa. But if you look at, as you correctly indicated, these national commissioners are being appointed by the president. In most instances, you will appoint people that you think will be able to protect, yes, and advance the interests of South Africa. I don't think any president will appoint somebody who, but there are also, whether we like it or not, some political interest of advancing a certain narrative. And that's where the problem comes. We've got a very good constitution. And perhaps that's where our civil society organization should come up. Our watchdogs should play a more, advocacy role, and even opposition parties have a role to play rather than just running to court. I strongly believe some of these issues would have been picked up, but I do not believe that, going to rewrite the constitution will, bring any tangible outcomes with regard to this particular challenge that we have in South Africa.
All right, professors, thank you so much for your time this evening. It certainly has been quite valuable. We'll continue to be looking out on those events, both the Madlanga Commission as well as the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Committee. But thank you to both of you for joining us this evening. That was Professor Sethulego Matebesi as well as Professor Kholofelo Rakubu giving us their analysis on our conversation this evening.